Hi guys, welcome back on the channel. Today I have with me again my friend James Morris, the author of Midgard Rules. Hi James, thank you for joining me.
Hello.
And and as the title says, Midgard, what's next? The title of the video. So we're here to discuss about upcoming things that you're preparing, and we're going to discuss about your new YouTube channel, so people are aware and can follow it. A couple of interesting battle reports that you fought recently, and then we're going to discuss and you give me advice about my upcoming Battle of Poitiers that I'm going to fight next month regarding special rules. Any advice from the author, from the horse's mouth, I think it will be fantastic. If you
Well,
want to say
let's kick
something.
off with Midgard supplement news then.
Yeah,
There's a lot of medieval content actually going on in the background at the moment. You'll be pleased to hear, and your channel has been big
I am.
inspiration. But yeah, so basically with Midgard, there is a campaign supplement that is in the works at the moment. It's pretty much all written, but we're in the stage where we need to get into production. So can't give any specific release dates or anything yet. Initially, the plan was to do PDF supplements, but talking to Rich Clark, he's interested in doing this one as a book. And I do think it would be great to produce this as a generic book. So the campaign supplement, which has been actually under testing for a couple of years, is comprised of a generic map-based campaign system, essentially that you can generate a series of narrative battles. And in this, you'll have a court of heroes. So this is what you record. You'll have your kind of level 1 barons and champions, your level 2 dukes and knights, and then your level 3 king or whatever at the top of the feudal pyramid, if you like. And you'll track their progress across a series of narrative battles. There's about 15 new scenarios going to the book as well, which have all been pretty extensively play tested. And the idea is very much that you can string together a campaign in any setting using this system. The plan is also to put a sample campaign into the book, so you've got a full example of how to run one, basically. And then, we're going to get that out, and then we'll follow that up with a number of PDF campaigns. So similar to the Two Fat Lardies pint-sized campaigns they have for the World War II Chain Command series, we're looking at goblet-sized campaigns with a number of medieval scenarios or fantasy campaigns. You can pick and choose as you like. I'm very excited about the campaign book, but again, I can't give any details on release dates yet because I don't know. We're still in the editing process, but it's had pretty extensive play testing, and I've been very keen to do a campaign-based thing for a while that doesn't get bogged down in lots of detail. I know many people have run fantastic campaigns with logistics, but it requires a very, very dedicated games master to organize that kind of thing. I know of many more campaigns that have run into the ground at clubs where they just become too complex, too unwieldy to run. So what I've tried to do is put together a very simple but colorful system where it runs off a map as a means of generating battles, but it is not a heavy logistical base game. It's very much about the narrative, what happens to the heroes, which heroes gain great reputation in their battles, which ones survive, and so forth, and move on. There's hero progression and so forth, moving up the ladder, moving up the feudal pyramid, if you like, as people are knighted and rewarded by the king, and so forth, whatever that looks like. So that's the next official Midgard project in the works. I've been doing a number of magazine articles and so forth recently. I've just recently written up the Mount Baden scenario for the Arthurian game that we ran at Partisan in May this year for a miniature Wargames magazine. And I just carry on doing bits and pieces like that, basically, while we're kind of waiting for the work to get underway on the campaign book. So lots happening. I'm getting around the place quite a lot as well at the moment. I'm traveling around playing games of Midgard with various people. Part of the testing process, just getting to see how it's being played in different parts of the country. So you'll have seen recently, a few weeks ago, I went over to see Gareth Lane, Lord Raglan in Wales, to play a 100 Years war game, which was an absolute treat. Well, I say game, we played 2 linked games as a mini campaign, and just being invited to go over to his war game shed was an utter pleasure. He's an absolute gentleman to game with. He's so interested in the narrative, in the story, but his collection is superb. So we played a game loosely set in 1346, where a bunch of Scots and French have sailed down the coast of Pevensey in a kind of Ridley Scott style, historical style, and besieged the castle of Pevensey. We had a couple of cracking games doing that, and we're all the time we're doing this, we're trying out some new little special rules, new traits, and so forth. I mean, as you know, Midgard is very much a sandbox system. There's lots of things you can pick out of the toolbox of traits to make things work, but sometimes for specific settings, specific scenarios, you do need to do something particular. We'll talk about that in a bit for your Poitiers game.
Yeah.
So we did a bit of that with Gareth and had a really, really enjoyable couple of games. And then I moved on to, a few days later, I moved on to the sunny heights of Mansfield, where I met up with Peter Dennis, the illustrator and creator of Peter's Paperboys. So he does an annual Peter's Paperboys kind of get together, and I'd been invited along to run the Battle of Stamford Bridge using Midgard, and none of the group had ever played before. So it was one of those great fun games where you're appointing all the people to be Harold Hardrada and Tostig Godwinson and so forth. And Andy Callan made a really good King Harold until he died, unfortunately. But yeah, absolutely great game, and really interesting to play the Paperboys figures as well, because it took me 5 days to put a Saxon army together for a kind of 400-point Midgard game. The speed of assembly is something else, and I think the visual impact is absolutely great. It's not the same as a lot of painted plastic or metal miniatures, but the time from saying I fancy making an army to getting it finished can be very, very short, because when you print the stuff, it's all pre-coloured and so forth. So that was a real treat. Yeah, great fun doing that as well.
Yeah, we're good.
I need to either blog that game in a moment or turn it into a video. The game with Gareth Lane I mentioned has gone onto my YouTube channel, which we'll chat about in a second. But yeah, the Paperboys one, I have all the photos. I just need to do something with it, really, because there's quite a good story to tell. But yeah, obviously I've started the Mogsymakes YouTube channel as well. I've been meaning to do this for a very, very long time, and finally just pushed myself into doing it. Because as much as I love running games and painting stuff and whatever, I've never edited video before. I've never done that as part of my job or whatever. So I just had to push myself to do it. Got some good advice from some friends, watched lots of channels like your content and Seventh Son and so forth, which are genuine inspirations, and then got down to it. So yeah, I've done a little battle report, 100 Years War, and some other bits and pieces. Oh yeah, painting. So also I've done a little video on painting plate armor. Often when I do Wars of the Roses battle reports, they get a lot of likes on Instagram and Facebook. There's a lot of people who love the knights and the shiny armor, and I always get a comment, how did you paint that? And I thought, well, let's turn that into a little video. So I'm doing this stuff step by step, but it's quite nice to be able to get some of the ideas out there in a different format than just putting them onto a blog. So that's been a really good learning experience recently. And I'm going to try and upload some Midgard video content again in the near future. I need to do some battle reports. But really, the format I'm planning for my YouTube stuff is quite short. I kind of like the 10 to 15 minute videos. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm leaning towards at the moment. Yeah. But, we'll see. And I'm just starting off. So, yeah. So lots happening, really. A lot of stuff.
Now, let's go back to your campaign. This campaign will be a campaign for a specific period, or will be people with any medieval armies will be able to play it? It's going to be generic.
So the plan is with the book is there's a system going into the book that is a generic campaign system. So you can make yourself a map on a grid, and there'll be some advice in the book on how to do that. And you'll be able to play that with whatever armies you choose. However, the plan is to put a specific campaign into the book as a template. So literally, here's how you can pick it up and play it. And at the moment, it's very likely that's going to be a campaign focusing on Alfred the Great fighting the Vikings at the Battle of Edington in 878. So the build up and then that battle. Because Alfred the Great kind of straddles that line between history and legend to a certain extent. Lots of people are very aware of him, thanks to obviously Bernard Cornwell, The Last Kingdom, or childhoods in English schools. So I think it's a good template campaign to put in there, and it's something I've been meaning to get back to for quite a while. But again, the plan is there then to make a lot of other campaigns in historical, fantasy, and legendary settings available as downloads, if people want to buy that specific campaign. But the book is very much intended as a generic. Here is a campaign system. Here are 15 scenarios, and you can play these with whatever you want to, because really most of it's going to work with fairly standard Midgard forces, whether that be, medieval or completely fantastical.
I just want to say that last year you gave me a small PDF that was part of this to help me with my campaign, and it was, although it's in generic form, it was excellent. You have your maps, you have your special rules, you have, it is even in this generic form and still not playtested. It was actually, it helped me a lot with my battle report that I shot on the channel. It actually has too many views. So obviously things are going to become much better, but I concur, I confirm that there is a lot of innovative ideas there, special rules, deployment, kind of terrain map. So it's something that obviously is going to be developed more, but it looked fantastic even in this form. It looked fantastic and very helpful.
Yeah, I think one nice thing I enjoy doing with the scenarios is going into different areas. So there are ambush scenarios with more terrain in them. There are more river crossing scenarios, and there's some fortress scenarios as well. So the campaigns tend to revolve around capturing one of the other side's fortress or base, or killing their king. And within the fortress scenarios, I've been asked, are there siege rules? There are not as such, but there are a couple of scenarios involving assaulting a wall of a fortress, a city, a castle, whatever you want to call it, which will depend on the setting that you're playing in. So it's not a full set of siege rules like the old Warhammer Age of Battles siege book, or indeed Warhammer Fantasy Battles classic siege book. It's not like that, but it's scenarios that involve different terrain and different tactical situations.
Yeah, it was excellent. Let me share the photographs you sent me from the two battles, and you can run us through them. This is what you were talking about. This is this paper. These are
the Peter's Paperboys figures. So these are the Saxons and Norwegians in combat at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. So yeah, they're incredible. The Paperboys figures. I've kind of they come in strips. I've glued the strips together, cut them out. Normally, I paint dark brown around the edge of them. Didn't have time to do that in this case, but by sticking them together and kind of kinking them, so you put them on the base and they're not all straight, you get a really quick visual effect of serried ranks. And then because the base uses my normal 3D basing techniques, you can see some tufts on there and some shields being used as a stamina loss marker. It absolutely looks the business and massively easy to transport. Yeah, so this is Gareth Lane's medieval castle. So it's an old Games Workshop mighty fortress, I'm told, I think from the 1990s. But like all his stuff, he's really souped it up. We just used this as the background in the battle, although we had a contingent of archers that were raining arrows on the Scots during the game. But yeah, beautiful piece of scenery. Gareth really goes to town. He talks about himself being a kind of Hollywood history game, which does put himself down a little bit because his stuff is way more colourful than the brown filters you get in every Hollywood medieval film at the moment. But absolute pleasure to play on this.
So this one looks amazing. I love, it reminds me of my armies, and I see some Claymore here as well. Talk to us about this one. Very nice.
Well, these are the Scots going into action. I think I'm correct in saying you've got the King's Banner on the right and Douglas is in the centre.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Claymore figures in Gareth's collection, some antediluvian figures as well, some Perry, some Foundry. And over on the left, he's got these little heater shields 3D printed by Paul at
Yeah.
Sabotage. These hold the microdives to hold the stamina loss, and it looks absolutely great. You know, it's obviously a giant shield, but it just blends in with the look of his old battlefield really, really nicely. And you can really see Gareth's diorama basing playing to its strengths here. This certainly, the more I'm collecting miniatures at the moment, the more I'm thinking, do I start to put units onto big bases or whole bases? You know I've got a reputation for basing stuff on magnetic sabos. I love doing that. If I'm going to be using them for skirmish games as well, but he's getting a look to these units that I absolutely love. So yeah, I need to do more of this.
Yeah, it reminds me of they're very similar to my bases. And I see here on the left, the guy holding with two hands the big axe. This is Black Tree Design. I have them as well. Very good miniatures.
Yes, yeah. You know, again, unfortunately at the moment, Black Tree Design do not have a great reputation for delivery, so I wouldn't, advise people to go and buy them first hand at the moment. But certainly, yeah, they're great figures if you can get hold of them. Oh, right. Yeah. Here I am as an honorary paperboy, obviously wearing my Midgard shirt. Yeah, there we've got Gerard, Andy Callan, Alex, Peter Dennis in the centre, on the right, Mirko. So basically, most of the team who run Paperboys games at shows are involved with running the Paperboys website in some form or another. I only really latched on. I knew about the Paperboys because I'd seen the Helion and Company books, but I only really latched onto them a year or so ago when I read a magazine article about them, which mentioned the speed of assembly. And I thought, that's great, because there's lots of periods I want to play, and I don't just want to play them with blank bases, I want to play them with miniatures. But if you can assemble these really quickly, and they're very cheap because you pay for the download, and then you just print as many as you want, and they absolutely live up to it. They're great miniatures, but it's more than just Peter Dennis. I mean, Peter Dennis is an absolutely lovely guy, very famous illustrator. And he's very much working. He's often working away at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning, working on his latest set of troops, and he's busy filling out the catalogue. But yeah, thoroughly recommended, actually, Paperboys. They've certainly rejuvenated my interest in some historical areas. I thought, I'm not going to get time to paint the figures for this, so I shall do more of that. And lovely, enthusiastic bunch of guys.
From curiosity, what did Andy thought of the rules? He wrote the Never Mind the Bill Hooks. So what was his feedback? I mean, he played first time.
He does. Andy, I know Andy anyway from the gaming scene in Nottingham. We've talked to each other quite a bit about this, because actually, we both didn't read each other's rules for some time, because although we could have said, can I have a playtest copy? Can I have a look at this? Because we were both developing rules in the same sphere, so medieval battle level rules effectively, we both, once we'd started writing, made a conscious decision not to get involved with each other's projects, because it affects your thought process. Yeah, so I played an awful lot of games of other people's rules for decades before I started writing Midgard. Once I'd started writing Midgard, I then kind of put the blinkers on and shut out some of the newer stuff out there, because I needed to focus on what I was trying to do. And I think Andy was very much the same. As you'd expect, when I was doing the game briefing, Andy had the most questions about how does this work, how does that work. He said, let's just play, let's just get on and play. But no, I think he enjoyed them. He was worried that Harold was losing until he killed Harold Hadrada in single combat, at which point it was all great until Harold got a javelin in the head, and it was a hilarious game. But yeah, I think he enjoyed it. We all had. It was a really good day, a lot of banter, a lot of good chat, and lots of guys who are passionate about toy soldier gaming. Really, yeah. So here's another shot of Stamford Bridge in progress. Probably a bigger table than we needed, but as you can see, we had a lovely garden room to play in.
Amazing.
Peter is a big fan of Cigar Box Battle Max. I think actually he uses some of their backgrounds in some of his paper basing that you can download from the website by arrangement with them. And yeah, here we've got a completely paper setup, basically, apart from the mat. So they provided the river, the bridge, the trees. So it was kind of all paper. It was, I think, the first time I've ever played a game since playing counter board games entirely using paper miniatures and scenery. But as you can see, it absolutely looks the part. From a couple of meters away, you wouldn't know the figures were paper, and it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, and what a lovely game room, huh?
Yes, and some more action. This is the early fight. We played 2 games in our 1346 game, and in the first one, the English mustered to fight the Scots who are coming up the beach. If you've seen the Ridley Scott's film Robin Hood with Russell Crowe, the less known one, there is the slightly dubious but entertaining beach landing scene with the French with a kind of landing craft a la D-Day. So we played here with the English mustering at the top of the beach, trying to give the Scots a bloody nose. Again, this is attention to detail here. The cross that we've used there from Gareth's collection, it actually, if you look very closely at it, it says R.I.P. Gareth Lane on it, or in memory, I think in memory of Gareth Lane. So I don't know if you can see that in there. But Gareth's collection is full of, it is full of wonderful little touches like that just make it a complete joy to play with. And the hill on the right-hand side was painted by Kerry of Snapdragon Studios, one of the really creative terrain companies from the 1990s, who stopped trading some time ago. But yeah, Gareth had used to help me out at shows and stuff. So he's got some great pieces of terrain in his collection with really good stories to tell.
Yeah, as you mentioned at the beginning, you started a YouTube channel that I will put the link on the description of the video.
Thank you.
Let me share you have some screenshots here of the channel. Actually, I could go to YouTube now, but let's share one of the screenshots. You have, I think, 3 or 4 videos currently. Why? And the one, I mean, all of them are really nice. I really enjoyed, obviously, the rules explanation for movement. It was very good. But so tell us about it. You just started it, and you're planning to commit. Needs commitment. The YouTube channel.
How many times a week do you want me to post, Nick? That's the question. I'm probably thinking of posting a video every couple of weeks, depending on how it goes. I want to put a mixture of content out there. My blog has got a lot of content on it, but one thing I saw very much from doing the videos with Rich of Two Fat Larders on the run-up to producing Midgard is that videos reach many more people, and many people expect to have video content nowadays. So that's absolutely fine. I've gone for a mixture of content to get started off. The screenshot we've got at the moment is the painting plate armor video. And again, with that, because I do both historical and fantasy, I thought, well, let's do some Wars of the Roses, Perry Knights, along some of the Oathmark armored elves to get a bit of a mixture of approach on this. I've put a detailed kind of Midgard notebook up about Midgard movement, which is the longest video at the moment, 18 minutes. What I really wanted to do there was talk through some of the core concepts of movement, but also just a chance to answer a few of the questions that you frequently get asked, because people enjoy this stuff alongside a rule book. YouTube is often the first port of call nowadays. Certainly a few years ago, I was learning a new board game with my son, and the setup instructions really didn't explain what the game should look like once set up. So I got straight onto YouTube and very quickly found a 15-minute video about how to play your first game of this. So, it's definitely the way to go. I'm planning more Midgard content, definitely, and battle reports, most certainly. Though, again, probably all in the 10 to 15-minute bracket, or focusing on particular areas of the rules or of battles and so forth. Indeed, yeah. So, this is the header for this is the front page for my Midgard Medievals with Raglan. This is my visit to Wales. I took a load of photos. I actually took no video on the trip. But once I got back and started playing around with movie editing. So I thought, no, actually, these scenes are so sumptuous. I mean, Gareth's collection is so wonderful to look at. I can actually make this work with just with just a filmed intro and outro and panning shots of the battle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. From my experience in YouTube, especially when you read the rules, and even if you are a native English speaker or if you speak good English, sometimes visual representation in a YouTube video helps you understand the rules. So many
Yeah,
of my videos, for example, that are very popular are workshops, as I call them, workshops from rules.
yeah,
Midgard, for example, I haven't posted Midgard. I was planning, and or other rules because people understand how the rules works, Baron's War or other rule sets. So this is something, especially coming from the author who knows exactly what is happening. I think this workshop you're planning to shoot, and obviously movement is the first one, they will be very helpful for many viewers.
yeah. That's really good to hear. Certainly, I'd like to do some on flank charges, combat, moving in killing zones, those things that are just a bit crunchy when you start playing the game. And it's a tricky one, I know, because many rule sets come out and are then not well supported in the time
Yeah,
following that. And often that's for things like bolt action or whatever. Alessio Cavatori's been paid to write the rules by Warlord Games, but to do lots of follow-up stuff obviously requires more investment, more money, and so forth. But I'm very keen to push Midgard. Also, I'm not planning to write a set of rules every year or every 2 years. So I'm very much
yeah.
hoping it can get quite a lot of my attention at the moment. And also, I think as the game moves into different settings, that really helps people to visualize how it could work for the period that they want to play.
Yeah, the obvious advantage from the gamers who purchase the rules, and also I mention it in the videos when I showcase your rule set, is that your rules have, regardless of the videos that you're going to create, have a lot of visual representations, have a lot of examples that make it easier to understand. In every rule set, in every rule, every mechanic, you have an example, you have a diagram. So this is always very helpful in a rule set.
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, I am so aware of the importance of putting pictures alongside the words. It sounds so obvious, but and what you were saying about native English speakers earlier, I have discussions every so often with people who have just read a sentence I've read completely different to the way I intended it.
Yeah,
And in those situations, like, wow, well, it's not, I'm slightly at fault here. How, or rather, not I'm at fault, but how could I have phrased that differently? If multiple people read it that way, then what can I do to make that difference? And I think the way is always, as far as possible, to look at your use of English, but then also reinforce it with an example and a diagram. So you're giving the same information in several different ways. And doing some videos, these videos are not essential to play the rules at all, but it's just another opportunity for me to communicate some of the key points and talk about questions I've been asked, things like that. And just to keep it as a very much a living community, because as I think I said
yeah,
to you last year, my goal is for people still to be playing Midgard 5 years after release. So that's very much what I'm working
yeah.
towards at the moment. And I think this is all part of it.
So let me share a photograph you send me, and probably you need to talk about it with about the photo. So let's start, because this has to do with our next subject, and this is where are the rules going from here now? What's your plan?
I'm not guaranteeing anything here, but yeah. So recently, I read the series of books by Ian Ross. Ian Ross is a fairly well-known historical fiction author. He did a six-part series set in the late Roman Empire, but recently he's moved into the Second Barons' War. I've had my eye on these for a while, although I had the first couple, but like I was saying with you with Andy Callan and the rules, when I'm working on a project, I try to read in period stuff. So if I am writing a load of army lists for our Fury in Britain or whatever, I'll be rereading my Bernard Cornwall books. I won't be reading something set in the late medieval period.
Yeah.
But so I was very excited to pull these out. These are brilliant. So it's a series of novels about a fictional knight, Ian de Norton. Sorry, Adam de Norton. Ian Ross is the author. Adam de Norton is the knight serving during the Second Barons' War. So essentially, the books cover his career during 1264, 1265, and 1266, in which period you've got the Battle of Lewes, then the Battle of Evesham, and then the Great Siege of Kenilworth Castle. And it's a period that's always interested me. And, you know, obviously you can't put on your phone now, you can't scroll through Facebook at all now without seeing somebody painting the latest Fab Barons War figures that are coming out. I mean, I have to say hats off to Wargames Atlantic and Footsore for getting 5 boxes, a complete range of figures out in a very short time space. I think they're going to make this period massively accessible to gamers. I know the thrust of the actual Barons War game is 1215 to 17, the first Barons War, but I think there's a massive amount of potential here. And certainly the way Adam de Norton, the hero, moves through these books and ends up in all the main action, in the same way that Sharp ends up in all the main action during the Napoleonic Wars. You know, they're a brilliant gaming resource. And I have to say, everything I've read about them strikes me that Ian Ross has absolutely done his homework on the weapons and on the armor. There's some lovely parts in the first book where Adam is learning his trade on the tournament circuit in Europe prior to the outbreak of hostilities in England. And yeah, it's a brilliant, they are a brilliant read. I was gripped. So yeah, 9 out of 10 recommendation from me, definitely. And that then got me onto some other books as well. If you have a look at the next picture.
Yeah, let me share it 1 second. So until I share it, so the plan is to do like a supplement for Baron's War, or Midgard supplement. How
you are putting words in my mouth here, but it's definitely a strong area of interest at the moment. Let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that took me back to actually, because I bought loads of these books in my past. On the bookshelf, I'd got some books about the Second Barons' War. Kenilworth Castle is an interesting one because although I was born in Canada, when I was 2.5, my family moved to Kenilworth in Warwickshire, which of course was the scene of the Great Siege of 1266. So Ian Ross wrote an article for Medieval Warfare magazine recently, which we've got there. In 2016, the Kenilworth Historical Society and the castle organised a huge event to commemorate the anniversary of the siege of Kenilworth Castle. So yeah, it's there. It's there, percolating away in the back of my mind. And the third book has quite a lot of action at the siege of Kenilworth Castle, ranging from full wall stormings and use of siege machines to, sorties out of the castle into the camps of Prince Edward and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of gaming material there. I don't know where I'll go with it, but High Medieval is very, very much on my radar at the moment. I'm really just looking for an excuse to paint some of those Barons War figures. And one of my really good friends has just come back from the USA and has started painting Barons War figures. And he's a very, very fast painter. So this is a potentially slippery slope. But actually, it's been great. I know you've done some Barons War games, and it's been really good to read about the warfare and think about, okay, what makes this different in terms of Midgard? And I know one thing that we've talked about, one thing I sent over to you the other week, is the cast of thousands rule that we've been trying out, whereby for a bigger medieval battle, we've been reducing the range of influence that heroes have. So Midgard, as you know, can span all these different settings as long as they feel right within their setting. It's not a tournament set. It's not designed to play, Bronze Age Europeans against samurai or whatever. It's none of that. But it is designed that you can move it between different periods, and hopefully in your setting, you can make the troop types and the trades feel right. But one comment I'd had recently was that the heroes had a bit too much influence on a bigger medieval battle. I looked at that, well, actually, that's absolutely fair comment, because a hero with a range of 2 spear throws influence in your regular Midgard game, is in the standard rules, can reach quite a few units. But in my head, although Midgard doesn't have an exact scale, I'm thinking this 300-point battles maybe represent about maybe 600 to 1,000, maybe 2,000 men aside. They're not really big battles. But once you get into these high and late medieval periods, you are seeing armies regularly in the thousands and 10,000 being very normal for that period. So I think restricting the radius of the command really helps. And also we know that when medieval commanders got locked into battle, when they joined they'd ridden up and down the line, when they joined their bodyguard and went into the melee as they were expected to do under their banner, there was a real limit to what they could influence on the battle line. And if you cut their range of influence down to 1 spear throw, that means that once they're in that unit, they can only influence their unit and the units either the immediate unit either side of them, effectively the people fighting directly in their battle. And we've played a few games using it. It gives you some really strong friction. We've really enjoyed the games. It does make the leaders less controlling, but it works. It works really well. I mean, it gives you a little bit more of that chaos of the medieval battlefield when you've got all these thousands of men you're trying to get into battle, and they're not all making it there. And I think the things like the Battle of Tewkesbury, where Wenlock's division didn't get into combat, or was rather tardy getting into combat, it provides good opportunity for those kind of events to happen in your game. Certainly with the first of the 2 games I played with Gareth in Wales, one part of the Scottish force in the first game didn't get into combat. It was so held up with appalling command tests at the start of the game. And we had Archibald, we had Lord Douglas ready to go into combat, and we were literally stood there making that decision. Does Douglas lead his men up and charge the English, or does he get on his horse, ride out the back and try to rally the troops who are at the back, but then knowing he won't be in the charge? I think we took the correct decision that he needs to be in the charge. And indeed, Midgard encourages you to do that because the reputation bonuses you get for leading charges are being seen at the front of the action. But it was a really good conundrum. And I think in another set of rules, you'd be making the obvious decision, well, if he goes into the combat, he might get killed, whereas I need him to lead those troops, which I feel is more of an 18th, 19th, 20th century mentality on it rather than medieval one. So putting that bit of friction in there works really, really well. And I don't know if you're going to try it out in your Poitiers game or not, but we've been using it a bit and it's worked very nicely. You may have seen as well on the group, John Savage ran a late Italian Wars game at the Midgard Moot in April. And recently I published the list for that. So they're free download on my website and on the Midgard Facebook group. And again, we talked quite a bit about Italian Wars. Is it right for Midgard? I think probably by the time you get to Pavia, probably not. But John's opinion was that early medieval wars works well for it because you're basically still in the late medieval, heroes leading from the front phase. Guns and pikes haven't quite got that level of drill and technology that makes them really destructive in the late period yet. And John ran 2 games at Midgard Moot, which went down exceptionally well. We put the list out, but again, he's been using the Cast of Thousands rule for that, and that works very, very nicely.
Yeah. No. So basically, this is the best part of creating a battle or creating a rule set. The investigation, in my opinion, is the best part, the most fun part of anything that has to do with wargaming.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love the research, the reading up. But as ever, I find I have to stay in one period at a time. It's sometimes hard to answer all the questions on the Facebook group because you think, okay, someone's asked a question about Punic Wars. I do know quite a lot about that, but I need to go and pull my books off the shelf. because I've not been playing that recently, so that's not where my headspace is right now. But certainly right now, there's quite a push within what we're playing within our group to play high medieval, late medieval games. I'm going out in a few minutes to play a Wars of the Roses game over at a club in Derby tonight, Boards and Swords Hobbies. So yeah, it's very much there in my mind, and I'm going to be trying out a new scenario, another few new things as we go along, and just see how I can make it feel more and more like those chronicle accounts of what the battles were like.
Yeah. And the good thing with the Baron's War, well, the advantage is, the 100 Years' War is similar, but the Baron's War, you have a lot of characters that can be part of your command. There's many characters, many commanders, many nobles. You have a variety of commanders could have different traits that can make the game very interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair comment. I mean, I'm very interested in Second Baron's War, but clearly there's a lot to do in First Baron's War as well. Yeah, no, lots of good stuff there. So, tell me about Poitiers. What are you using? Because I've been watching your videos. I love the map of Normandy. You did a fantastic job there. It's so good to see. I have to say, I'm hand drawing.
If you want the map, I can send it to you. It's no problem.
It may draw me into collecting a period I shouldn't be doing, but Peter's Paper Boys will let me I'll be able to make the armors in 2 weeks. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Now, I've been hand drawing and painting the maps for my Midgard campaigns so far. They'll be professionally drawn, for the actual book, but it's great to see what you can do with the software. So
it's fun. It's a hobby of mine. So Poitiers, what I have, I did my investigation. This is a small map I made for my next video, with a hedge. Yeah. So what I've concluded up to now is, first of all, for the hedge, I'm going to use your stakes rule. The hedge was a deterrent for sure. It will reduce the die roll of the French for sure, and infantry, because if you see from the photographs of David Nicol, it was not a simple hedge. It was a monster, with trees and branches and everything. So
we're almost into a Normandy bocage level of hedgerow here, aren't we? When we think hedge as wargamers, we often think about the thin little railway modelling hedge, and this is nothing in the store. This is a great natural obstacle. Yeah, no, the stakes rule isn't in the book, but it is on the Agincourt lists that are available on the website. Maybe you can pop a link into those as well. Again, that's a free download. But yeah, so they essentially...
I will put the website, and I will put also the Facebook page. I will put all the links again, as we did before. So yes, I'm going to use the hedge as exactly copy-paste your rules from Agincourt. And because David Nichols and Creating Miniature Knights from Mario Venturi and who was the English guy? I forgot his name. Mentions that after the first waves of attack from the French, in some locations, the hedge is not mentioned. That means that the French managed to break it. So I will follow exactly your rules. So if the French push back the English, I remove this section of the hedge. The hedge is not anymore. So I think that your rules for stakes are perfect for the hedge.
It's a simple rule. The idea being, I guess, that once the unit holding the stakes has lost a round of combat, once they get pushed back, the battle is going beyond that, and they're no longer quite the defence they were. Obviously, it wouldn't all be just knocked down or cleaned up or whatever, but I think for simplicity, you need to do that. Certainly, with a lot of Midgard games that we play, we put some terrain on the table to look good, but when it ceases to have a function in the game, you move it, because the game is about the narrative of the battle, not getting hung up on the exact existence of that. And by that point, if you can eventually say it's out of the game because enough people have gone over it, or they've knocked down a section, or they found a gap within it. The Poitiers reports, you said the French were often funneled towards the gaps, a bit like, it's possibly a stretch, but a bit like barbed wire in the First World War, where some sections people got to them and found it was all still intact. Other sections they got to them and it had been shelled to pieces, and they were able to get through. I think the important thing is the effect on the game. not
Yeah.
exactly what it does. I'm curious about how you're going to do the waves. So Poitiers is a very interesting one because essentially you've got 3 waves of French coming in. Now,
Yeah.
if you play that as a straight up medieval game, a straight up Midgard game, sorry, the force morale will break probably halfway by the time the second division has got battered. So, do you have a plan? Because I do have a suggestion.
I have. Let me tell you what I've think what I will add to the rules, and then you can give me an advice for everything. So the second thing I was planning, based on what you told me regarding the command and control, is that 100 years old, we need to portray. We have to be realistic that the English had much better command and control than the French. It was and I want to portray this difference. So I'm going to keep the Midgard rule 2 ST for the English without any reduction, and I'm going to have 1 ST for the French. I want to
Wow,
portray this difference in command and control that we all know very well was the reason that the English won many battles, the French impetuosity, the French losing control of their armies. So I will use your rule, but I will use it only for the French.
that is really interesting. I've not
Yeah.
done that. I'll be fascinated to see how that goes. Yeah, no, that sounds like it also means actually for the French, because the solution we took with the Agincourt lists was we made all the French leaders quite poor quality, level 1, level 2 heroes. So they had less mighty deeds to spend. But actually, if you've got a restricted command range, then that means you can have level 3, really good quality fighting heroes, but they have a limited size of control. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Let us know how that
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, I will. I
Okay.
will. I will post it. This third rule I have is because Midgard rules were initially designed for the Dark Ages. It's a generic, and you can overlay Dark Ages. Um, I had the feeling that I wanted to portray a little bit more precisely the arrow storm. The arrow storm
Yep.
was not that effective by killing necessarily, but it had the effect you have in your rules of pushing back. So
Yes.
what is another rule set? And this arrow storm, because I know that the English didn't shoot many arrow storms. They shoot a couple of arrow storms. They didn't have enough, arrows. So what I'm
Yep.
going to do is I'm going to use a marker for the missile for the lumberman. And it's a very simple rule that is basically I'm trying to create house rules based on the mechanics of the rules. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to add something that is foreign because then it doesn't make sense. So what I'm
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
do is I'm going to allow the English lumberman twice per game to shoot with full die rolls outside the 1ST.
Yep.
So this will portray the arrow saw.
So you'll
This
get
will
8, 9
portray that,
dice at range.
yeah,
Yeah.
nine
Yeah.
dice, 2 ST or 3 ST. I think this will depict well the arrow storm because
Mm.
obviously the longbowmen were more deadly in close range, but when they shot all together as an arrow storm, they were quite effective even in 3 or 2. And usually you had these mounted knights or foot knights who were pushed back, as your rules have, or came
Yeah.
with less stamina. So I think I can portray the bow capacity and the strength of the arrow storm by giving them two arrow storm, so giving them 2 full die rolls outside the 1ST. And then they won't be able to do it. So that's one thing I was thinking.
Yeah. Give it a go, I guess. I mean, as you kind of know, Midgard's shooting is deliberately weaker than combat because it is a close combat game. And I very much wanted to make sure that battles were not settled at long range, that there was an opportunity for people to get into combat. As much as the longbow was so prevalent in English armies of the 14th, 15th century, actually none of the battles were decided by archery. And again, when you look at the Wars of the Roses, even when you've got both sides with longbows, the battles are still decided. The archery causes casualties, it pushes people into action or deters people or whatever, or hits key leaders, but the battles are still sorted by hand strokes at close quarters. So yeah, I'd be fascinated to hear how that plays. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I will. I don't know if I use two or one, but basically your rules portray this arrows shooting. It cannot destroy you, but it will push you back. It will break the lines. It will delay the mounted. The line will not attack coherently. So I think by giving them even one arrow storm per game, so allowing them to shoot with nine dice outside one ST, maybe I can see how this works.
Yeah. I think once per game is about right off the top of my head. Another thing you might want to use is the held breath trait. So the trait that means when you get hit by missiles, you take your command test with 2 dice rather than one. You pick the lowest, so you give you a higher chance of being pushed back. So normally we have that for gunpowder weapons, but actually Gareth and I tried it out with crossbows in our game the other day. So that could, if you're using the arrow storm rule, that you could slip that in there as well. Give it a go by all means. It was interesting actually because the week after I visited, Gareth Lane hosted Dr. Rob Jones, author of A Corsair, who I enjoyed your interview with the other day. And Rob, I believe, enjoyed the game with Gareth. It's the first time he played Midgard. But his one comment that got passed to me by Rob was that, is there a way to make the longbows slightly stronger beyond their killing zone? And we had a brief discussion, but your arrow storm idea I like. So yeah, give it a go.
We'll give it a shot. Now, two things. Because I've studied a lot of the 100 Years' War and the battles, and your question that now I'm going to answer. I'm going to attack in waves, and my house rule is going to be that let's say the second wave will start after the first wave has finished. So I will give tokens separate for every division of the French, like a separate army. But I won't attack, for example, with Orléans, or I will not attack with the king unless Dauphin is out. So I will wait for the first wave to finish, and this is what happened actually in most of the 100 Years' War battles. The French were waiting for the first division to be destroyed or flee, and then the second division was coming. Very few times. I mean, maybe in Agincourt, the second division attacked, and the first was there, and one fell over each other. But even at that time, the first division was almost destroyed. So what I'm going to do, the 3 waves I'm going to have, I'm going to give them like separate armies. So as soon as the first wave breaks, I'm going to go with the second wave. What do you think?
That's exactly what I was going to recommend. We did something very similar we did the big Battle of Five Armies Tolkien game at Partisan last year. And Dave Hunter from our playtest group who umpired it, he basically wrote it because in Tolkien's book, the battle lasts all day and it goes in different phases whereby first the first arrivals of orcs attack the elves up the hill. And then in the second one, Foreign Oakenshield gets involved. And to keep that chapter kind of feeling, we had the scenario divided up into different chapters. And essentially we had the first orc force was not going to break the Free Races force by itself, but we had it on, and then once their force morale, once their reputation broke, then we did a reset and moved on to chapter 2. And it sounds like you're doing exactly the same thing. I think that is the very obvious way to do it. The problem with these kind of battles is if you give Poitiers just on paper to a bunch of wargamers and go, right, Anglo-Gascon force, there's your force, French force, there's your force, put them all on at once. The French force will probably steamroll it because they'll be able to link up a coordinated attack, which historically they didn't have the command and control to do that.
That's why I'm using this rule. Yeah, that's why.
So I think that works perfectly. So literally, you can have the French come on, the first French contingent come on with they'll have a lower force morale than the English, but when they break, I presume you'll probably then remove those and then get the second wave on, or get them into action. It also means, in a very simplistic way, you don't then have all the fag ends, all the leftovers of the first wave units in the way. We've assumed there's been a pause in the battle. Those people have left the battle or been captured or killed or wounded or whatever, and then the second wave comes in. And I think that's going to work really well. But of course, what you will have is the Anglo-Gascon force with a force morale that is not added to throughout the day. They'll start with their amount in their goblet or whatever, and then it will go down. And the French measure of success is what attrition can they put on to the English over the course of the day. And, can that third attack be the final straw that breaks it? Or is it the final straw where King John gets captured?
Exactly.
Sounds like a good game. Good. I'm glad. It's kind of nice to know we've had exactly the same idea, but I think it's an obvious way to do it.
And the last thing I'm going to do is a couple of events. For example, the second division of Orleans leaving the battlefield, and the flank attack of Capital de Bush. What I'm going to do, because in my battle maybe this event will not happen, I will roll for a difficult morale test with 2 dice. If they succeed, the flank attack materialized, or if Orleans succeed, the second division never left the battlefield; it attacked. So I'm going to use a difficult morale test, because the simple morale test it gives more chances of success.
Yeah.
I will give the difficult morale because they're very critical decisions, and I will see if the flank attack may not materialize, and if Orleans will leave. That's the last rule I'm going to use.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I think with historical refights, everyone playing generally knows how the battle goes. It's just a question of what you put in there. I've done historical refights where a flank attack came in, but in the refight, you don't know which side it's coming from. So people know the flank attack is coming, and this is reflected in some of the Midgard scenarios in the original book, and that will be in the campaign supplement. This idea that you've got reinforcements coming, but you're not quite sure where they're going to arrive. Just creating that little bit of suspense. But that sounds really good. I think a refight has to be. You have to interpret it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because you probably want to have some chapters and key events that definitely happen, but you also don't want it to just run on rails. You want it to be a fight that could go either way. Because really, what you're playing to see is, could it have gone either way? What could a different result have been? So yeah, sounds good. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, that's it. So let us recap. So we have the supplement coming up with battles, campaigns coming up. We don't know when, but it's on. No. It's cooking. It's cooking. So
it's cooking. Yes, it's in the oven. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of nice generic reports, minor campaigns, bigger campaigns. So this is something, obviously, we discussed when we were talking about the rules, and I told you that many gamers love campaigns, and hopefully they will get campaigns. So the second, we saw very nice pictures of your games. A new YouTube channel. Good luck. I wish you all the best. I will showcase it on the channel anyway. We'll put links for the guys to follow, and starting your investigation for possible, if you find the time, if you enjoy Baron's War Midgard era supplement. There is a chance.
Who knows? You're probably generous with supplements, but I suspect you'll see me playing some 13th century stuff before the year is out. Put it like that.
Yeah, I get you. So did I miss anything? Did we forget anything?
No. Thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to come and chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so knowledgeable. It's great to be on the channel.
We'll have all the links of your Facebook page and the site and everything below, and people will have the channel links, everything. And as I said, guys, Midgard Facebook page is excellent. There are many gamers there, and if you have any rules questions, anything, and James and everybody else is very accommodating. They're very helpful. They're very understanding. So join the group. It's really fun and it's really helpful, and you can get inspired also with some very beautiful photos.
There are some amazing pictures appearing on there. Many not mine, I hasten to add. There's some great stuff on there. It's lovely to have such a creative online community,
Yeah,
fantastic.
Of course.
Right, Nick, thanks very much. Absolutely brilliant.
James, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for coming here.
Best of luck with your Poitiers game. I look forward to reading about it.
I will send you photos.
I know you will. Take care. Right.
Okay. Thank you much, guys. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye. Bye.